Hello! This video has been a long time in the making. I wanted to show my main collection of Star Wars CCG cards, which are binders that have what I consider all the main characters. This became my goal when I started collecting again as an adult, which is almost 3 years ago. I loved main character cards when I was a kid and basically didn't have any of them. I think my best card was a Greedo and an Imperial class Star Destroyer, the uncommon. And so I'd seen the main character cards. I thought they were incredible. And when I saw it, they were affordable as an adult, that was my goal. And so it quickly expanded to be not just one of every main character, but one of every version of every main character. And that is what I think I have finally completed in this collection. So we start here with the light side binder. This is a white binder. For all my binders, I use the BCW 12 pocket folio. Has pros and cons, but mostly pros as far as I can see. Sometimes the cards get unstuck from their positions like that, but for the most part it works really well. Anyway, this is the page. It starts with the first main character, Luke. So I've got English Luke from Premier Limited, Japanese, white border Premier, foil, and foil Japanese. Similarly for this card from the 2-player starter set, English, Japanese. For Commander Luke, English, Japanese, white border, foil. You get the picture, you get the order that these are in. Probably makes sense. So I'll move these over and we'll go through all the cards. Son of Skywalker. So this is every persona, meaning every version of the card of Luke. And then also I decided not to stop with the main characters, but also to collect their weapons and starships. I've got one of every version of Anakin's lightsaber, Luke's lightsaber, Luke's blaster pistol. Obviously, you can go down the rabbit hole. There's also, I think, Luke's hunting blaster, whatever. I didn't think that all of them were that cool. But one of every version of Red 5, including Japanese, Rogue One. And then we've got Leia. So one of every version of Premier, Leia. 2-player. I figured this counts as Leia because it's called Leia of Alderaan. It has a picture of her face zoomed in, just like the main characters do. I can comment as I'm going through these on some of my choices also with what I chose to include as a main character, what personas I chose to include, why certain cards were included, why certain others were not. Got Jabba's Palace Leia, and so forth. This card is Leia, daughter of Skywalker, foil, one of my favorite cards. And then Leia's weapons as well. One of every Han Solo, including when he's a spy. I have this card in this orientation over here because I think it's cooler. I'll show the other side as Jabba's prize. So all these cards you can see are double sleeved. So I have them in a KMC Perfect Fit. And the KMC Perfect Fit goes inside of one of these sleeves. These are Ultra Pro. I've got white for the light side and black for the dark side that you'll see later. Han Chewing the Falcon. And then I figured the Millennium Falcon being Han's ship, one of every version of that. There are many different versions of Millennium Falcon. Gold Squadron 1 is technically Millennium Falcon. Lando in Millennium Falcon. Another version of Han Chewing the Falcon, this time representing the Falcon itself. This card, not the Millennium Falcon, but a similar type of spaceship. And then another ship with the pilots. Every version of Chewbacca, including Chewie's stuff, Chewie's blaster, and Chewie's AT-ST, even though obviously it's not really his. Another Han Chewing Falcon this time for Chewie. One of every version of Lando. I love it when it lines up like this, where it's like 2, 2, 2. Here it doesn't quite line up because there's 1, but otherwise it would have been 2, 2, 2. And then this card again, because this time it's representing Lando, so I include the character in a starship as a version of that character, so Lando in here. And then Lobot. And I guess these are not mains, but I love how these cards look. I think they're so nice looking, and figured they're associated with Lando, so I included them here. On this page, one version of every R2-D2, and this is the nice lineup 2, 2, 2, 2. Here you can see we start to include the alternate images as well, and one of every version of C-3PO. You might be noticing I'm missing over here the foil version of this again. I figured to include it again because one time it's representing R2, one time it's representing C-3PO, and here is the foil that I just slipped behind here so that it can all fit neatly on these pages, because this one having an AI foil throws it off. One of every Obi-Wan Kenobi, and of course we get into the prequels as well with some of these cards. And apparently there are 5 versions of Obi-Wan, or 6 versions of Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber. I never understood why. There's a couple of cards in the game, I think only maybe this one more, that have 2 cards that are the exact same name. They could have just called this Obi's lightsaber or Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber, but no, they made it the exact same name. Now I've got Wedge Antilles. For a while I didn't consider him a main character, but given how popular he is, I decided to add him in also. It took a while to collect all these versions, including one of every version of his ship, Red 2, Gold Squadron 1, which he pilots, and his rogue ship. And then some of the semi-main Rebel characters. One of every version of Yoda, and Qui-Gon. Here I'll show, probably you can see most of it like this. This is Qui-Gon Continued, his lightsaber, this ship that he's in, one of every version of Mace Windu, and then some others from I guess all the others from the Jedi Council that haven't yet been covered over here, including the Jedi Council itself, some locations I consider mains or if they're associated with the main character. Valorum, Shmi Skywalker, and the rest of the prequel characters on the next page. I've got probably my favorite page ever, one of every Queen Amidala, including, I included this here so it would fill out 4 in a row, but also because this was the decoy, I think the main decoy that actually was Amidala at one point. And then her blaster and her starship. And over here, characters associated with Amidala and Naboo, so Panaka, one of every version of him, his blaster, and then the main Gungans, Jar Jar and Boss Nass. And then expanded universe characters. I'm not really sure if these are considered main characters, but I thought I really like these ones, so these are the ones I included. I know there are others. And then Brainiac, one of my favorite cards when I was a kid, because I thought this math thing was so funny. So I figured why not one of every version of Brainiac. There's 5, right? So English, Japanese, white border, foil, and foil Japanese. Another one slid in there. Then I expanded this to not just be main characters and their weapons and ships, but also the capital ships as well. So I've got one of every, I think, capital ship on the light side, and same for dark side. So you can see here foil Corvette, one of the most valuable cards in this collection probably, although maybe on par with the Japanese. I love the shape of those Corellian Corvettes. All these other capital ships too from the light side, and then the Death Star 2 set, lots of really cool ones. Some have foil versions as you can see, some don't. It's kind of nice to have all this collection laid out because then you know which versions have foil, Japanese, English, etc. And the home one, interior location. These aren't quite mains, but I love how these cards look, the Admiral's Order, so one of each version of each. I think one has a foil over here, and then a couple from the prequels. And then lastly, not quite main characters, but I figured all the valuable or useful interrupts, I would get one version of each of those as well. I have not kept up to date with that, so I'm considering this not part of the main collection, but kind of a side part of the collection, because some of these used to be valuable are no longer valuable because of how virtualized cards have changed. Some have shot up in value and I haven't yet acquired them, but I do have one of each version of Let the Wookiee Win, Jedi Levitation. There's these. I know this isn't valuable, but it's a very used card as well. This one shot up in value recently. And more, and then I figured some of the valuable locations as well in this blank misprint card. But this is a side part of the collection. And then here I've got all the remaining tournament foils in the light side. So there's a Corellian Corvette and Qui-Gon, which were earlier in the binder. And here are all the other ones, just to make it comprehensive, even though these aren't quite main characters. So that is it for the light side. I'm going to get the dark side binder now. What I like is these can zip so they don't get dusty. So I zip them up. I also have them labeled on the side like this. Star Wars CCG light side. I'll put this away. And the dark side binder. And this was the very first thing I sought to collect was Darth Vader, and one of each version of Darth Vader. Here we are. Darth Vader English, Japanese, white border, foil, foil Japanese, and so forth. Here I figured Anakin Skywalker, why not? I know it's an interrupt, but it's called Anakin Skywalker. You've got his ship when he's with the TIE fighters. His other ships are going to be on their page. There's 5 versions of this version of his lightsaber, and 2 versions of this one, his shuttle, and there's his regular ship. And then this I figured because it says something like flown by an unknown pilot who likes to spin, which we know is Anakin. There's a little picture of Anakin there, so not technically a Vader persona, but could be. Then Imperials, I've only got the ones that I consider more main or that were more featured in the earlier sets. So one of every version of Tarkin, including Japanese, one of every version of Mahdi, one of every version of Veers. This was one of the last cards I got for my collection. Traded about $1,000 worth of cards for this. And Ozzel, similarly, the Ozzel rare one from Hoth, very hard to get. So one of every version of Ozzel after Veers. Captain Piet, including when he's in Death Star 2. This other guy, Stormtrooper Garrison, I figured is cool. Baron Sunterfell, because I think he's a more important character in the expanded universe, his ship. And then, not an Imperial, but Outer Rim Scouts are, I think, used to be highly played cards. So I figured I'd include them there. Now I've got one of every Emperor. And you might see some choices I made. I didn't mention this earlier, but some cards that technically are dark side are in the light side binder, just like these cards that are light side are in the dark side binder, because I figure Palpatine is obviously mainly a dark side character, so I include every percent of him here, just like I included the dark side Landos in the light side binder. So I have them in the correct sleeves, the white sleeves, to distinguish the black sleeves from dark side cards. All the sleeves match what color the back of the card is. So one of every version of Palpatine, including when he's Darth Sidious, his Force Lightning, his shuttle, his throne room, his sword, his shield, the Imperial Guards, and other versions of the guards as well. So I figured they're Force Pike. I love the guard characters when I was a kid, and even how the ones in the prequels look too. So every Imperial Guard from the prequels as well. Now we've got Boba Fett, fan favorite. Every version of Boba Fett, when he's in his ship, his blaster, his Mandalorian armor, Slave 1, and then I figure other bounty hunters as well. I've got all the side bounty hunters at the end of the binder, because I didn't really consider those main characters until I decided to really complete this collection, so we'll get to those later. But I did think Jodo Kast counted, because he looks like Boba Fett, Mandalorian armor and all, Greedo, and Bane Malar. Jabba the Hutt, every version of him. So the ones that are next to these are foils, of course. His space cruiser, his barge, and then the associated characters with Jabba the Hutt, Bib Fortuna, Salacious Crumb, these guys. Of course, there's more that you could associate with Jabba the Hutt, but I thought these were the main ones. And then the monsters that are associated with Jabba, the Rancor, the Sarlacc. And then I have more monsters over here, because they play an important role in the film. The Wampa, the Krayt Dragon, because of the Book of Boba Fett episode, and all versions of the Space Slug. Then, this is not a character, but I do consider it to remain the Death Star. So you'll see how many versions there are. English, Japanese, white border, foil Japanese. Then the light side versions, these have the white sleeves from Special Edition, Death Star 2, and then I like this Hyperroute navigation chart, and you can see over here the rendezvous points, I included that as well, even though these are light side cards. It's one of those sort of vertical full art systems that I like. Now getting into the prequels, we have one of every version of Darth Maul. I figure maybe besides or instead of the Darth Vader page, this would be the most valuable page, because it's got the foil AI over here, tournament foil over here, his lightsaber. I like how this lines up, right? So we've got him, 3 of his lightsaber, 3 of his ship, and the Phantom Menace I figured I'd include as an interrupt because it's associated with Darth Maul. Then we've got the Neomoidians, every version of Nute Gunray, Rune Hucko, Dalte Dauphine, and then Destroyer droids. Again, not quite a main character, but figured I'd include it because it's iconic and the cards are valuable. And then the characters from Tatooine also, even Aurra Sing, all their versions, including the AIs. Now, capital starships. So here we've got the foil Imperial class Star Destroyer. I love how these line up over here. So English, Japanese, white border foil. Same for all these. Same for all these. So we've got 2 from Premiere, not named and named. 2 from A New Hope, not named and named. And then 2 from Hoth that are both named. This Tyrant, also one of the last cards I got for the collection. I previously had a version that was very heavily played, so I traded up for a nicer one and sold the old one. These Hoth cards are very hard to get, but payoff is nice in terms of how they look. Then the pattern gets off over here. We've got the Dagobah ones, Special Edition, and tons from Death Star 2. Then I figured not just Star Destroyers, but every capital ship has to include every capital ship. Technically, Houndstooth is a capital ship, so I've got those, including Bossk Inn's Houndstooth. And then there's more capital ships as well, the Dreadnoughts. These ones from the prequels, I figured the interior side as well, because it's the interior of that. You see the rabbit hole, this can go down. And this weapon that's key for capital ships. Then walkers, I figured sort of being characters, so I include them as well. Every version of the Imperial Walker from Hoth. Again, Japanese rare ones from Hoth, very hard to get this card. Blizzard 2, Dune Walker, Tempest 1. Every version of the AT-AT cannon, including Japanese, and the Chicken Walkers, AT-STs. So this one, very hard to get. All of these. So in Endor, you'll see, I didn't comment on this previously, but I have every version, including with different copyrights. So same thing with General Solo and Chewbacca that you saw in the light side binder here. 2 different copyrights for this card because one came in the Death Star 2 starter deck as opposed to the Endor set. So I've got both versions. Here, this one is a foil version. This one has a starter deck version and so forth. And the weapon. Oops, sorry for the camera bouncing about. Expanded Universe cards, one of my favorite pages because I love Mara Jade and Thrawn and Scizor. I like how all this lines up too because it's got Scizor's ship over here. And I know there were more Expanded Universe characters in Reflections too, but these are the ones I considered main character enough to include. Now, just like the light side binder, we've got each version of the Admiral's orders, useful or valuable interrupts, including some of the really valuable ones like this and this. Some of the valuable locations, although I haven't sort of completed this in terms of Japanese and whatever, probably not going to the more valuable objectives, even though objectives have gotten more valuable across the board. So I just consider this page extra, not sort of an important part of it. And then here is with the light side, we've got all the remaining tournament foils that were not covered by the main characters. So in this binder, Darth Maul with lightsaber foil and Star Destroyer foil were previously in here, and here's the rest of them. Then, like I mentioned, I figured, gotta include all the bounty hunters. There's a lot of different versions of each of these bounty hunters, and they barely fit towards the end of the binder. So we've got every version of Bosk, including with his gun, in his ship. I know I included these before, but including them again here to be associated with Bosk. Every version of his weapon. It's kind of fun to see how many of these different personas and weapons and stuff there are. So I guess if you add all these up, 13 different cards associated with Dengar. I think IG-88 has the most, because we've got all those versions over here. He has 2 weapons, and each has a white border card, and then his ship. So that's 14 cards associated with IG-88, only 10 for Zuckuss. And lastly, to round it all out, is Forlom. That's the end. So before I go, whoops, sorry about the moving camera again, I figured I'd share some other parts of my collection. I'll mention I do have a bunch of sealed product, including 1 pack from each set, a bunch of graded cards, but just wanted to show some of the ones that I thought were most worth showing, which is not comprehensive of the collection. So first, in terms of graded cards, one collection I recently completed that I was really going after for a long time was the main characters from Premier Limited in Beckett BGS 9. So all these have a grade of exactly 9. We've got Luke, Obi-Wan. The reason I was so interested in completing this set of cards that I consider, or not all the cards I consider main characters, because there's a few others, but the main characters from Premier Limited. Because like I said, when I was a kid, these were so hard to find. These were so valuable. I thought it'd be cool to get all of them in such nice condition. But in particular, because I think grading Star Wars cards is relatively easy. Like, most of them come out of the pack looking really nice, except from Premier Limited. First of all, the cards that people have already opened from packs are usually in terrible condition because they're so old, the print quality is so bad, the cards get damaged over time. But in particular, even out of the pack, like I graded some of these cards out of the pack that did not get 9s, it got way lower, and eventually had to keep grading or trading or buying in order to get the desired grade of exactly 9. So my hypothesis, for anyone who's in the graded group, this will sound familiar, but the value of the other graded cards I think will go down over time eventually. Once sort of more people get into them, they'll go up and then eventually down because they'll be relatively easy to grade. But these Premier Limited mains in high grades are going to become incredibly valuable because it is so hard to get them in good condition, obviously including the Darth Vader as well. So I'll stack these up again. Hope you enjoyed that view. And the last thing I wanted to show was another small binder I have that is for the cards from that main character binder that I consider my favorites. And for my favorite cards, I figured I don't just want to get 1 copy. I'd like to get 4 copies to fill up a whole page. I will say it didn't start out that way. Originally, I just wanted 1 copy of each, but I got some extra copies and was loath to sell extra copies of my favorite cards like Darth Vader. And so I kept them and eventually got up to 4, and then eventually got up to 8, because I thought it'd be nice to fill both sides of a binder like this. So we start with Darth Vader from Premier Limited. Probably my favorite page out of any binder I have. Just 8 shiny Vaders. I will say every card in the other binders, as well as this one, maybe this one to a lesser extent, is what I consider near mint, or at least near mint on the front. And so I've been trading up for cards, replacing them, getting them to the point where they can all be near mint. In this binder, some of the last couple of cards in each set of 8 might be more like slightly played. I've been a little bit more forgiving there, but in the other binders, near mint was important to me. Boba Fett. This version from Cloud City being my favorite. I will also say that I like these non-foils a lot better than the foil version. Actually, when I started collecting, like I said, 2.5 or 3 years ago, these were more expensive than the foil versions. Not by much. And now the foils are way more valuable. I think at the time, players don't like the foils as much because they curl, so theoretically you could, accidentally cheat by having them be bent in your deck. They were more printed, right? Especially Reflections 1, having a ton of foils, main characters that are relatively easier to come by. I'm not sure what the stats are and all that in terms of the print runs and the odds. But anyway, Foils were less valuable when I started collecting. Now they're more valuable. I still don't like the Reflections 1 foils that much. I find them kind of dark and green, kind of hard to see in a binder, so only collected non-foils here. Mara Jade, and then still waiting for 2 more Mara Jades, so in the meantime filled it in with some extras of the other expanded universe characters I like. Executor, I don't think I stopped at 8. I basically said any number of Executors is nice, so I've got tons of black border ones, white border, and foils. And Flagship Executor, foil. Only 4. Like I said, I don't like the Reflections 1 foils as much. Reflection 2, I think the foiling pattern is much better. So this one I like in foil, better than non-foil. And then moving over to light side, we've got Son of Skywalker. I think I mentioned this in a previous video. It's my favorite card because my friend bought it when I was a kid, and I thought it was so quote-unquote cheap at the time to just buy a single card you needed instead of having to open tons of packs to get it. And I was so jealous when his dad just outright bought it for him in front of me. And so to this day, I love this card. I always wanted to have it. And then I figured, I don't think I stopped. Yeah, not stopped collecting it. 8. I guess it's 14 them, going for 16. Master Luke. I also really, really like this version of Luke. I think it looks super cool. Daughter of Skywalker in foil. I love the foiling on the Endor foils, the rainbow that goes around the picture on the frame. So I've got 8 of these in foil. Not quite at 8 yet of this one because it got more expensive recently. Same thing with Home 1, 4 foils. Maybe I'll get 4 non-foils as well. And then Millennium Falcon from Premiere. Again, very hard to find these cards in good condition. Not all of these are perfect, but 8 near mint black border copies was a goal of mine. Tantive 4, probably less valuable, but I still really like that card. I think that's it. Okay, now Young Jedi. I don't know how much people care about Young Jedi. I'll have to make a whole other video just with my Young Jedi cards because I have 1 of each English foil Young Jedi card. But in case you want to see a sneak peek, these are some of my favorite Young Jedi cards that I also have duplicates of. These are foils from Jedi Council, and these are foils from Reflections that I haven't yet finished out. Thank you for watching this. If you stuck around, I hope you enjoy seeing the pictures. I hope you enjoy seeing how I laid everything out, learning about how I store everything in terms of double sleeves and what kinds of binders and whatnot. And if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Thank you.